Last NFL season, I cashed out 10K in profits by mid-season on Prize Picks, and if that wasn't enough, I made 12K in a single day on Underdog. I spent the offseason diving deep into the numbers, coding like a madman, and analyzing every stat I could get my hands on. Now, I'm not just here to win again, I'm here to show you exactly how you can too. We're going to break down 4 key strategies that'll have you cashing out before you know it. You will absolutely hate the last one, but I promise it will boost your profits exponentially. The first strategy lays down the foundation for the whole rest of the video, so make sure you pay attention. I call it simple correlation because, well, it's simple. For those of you who haven't touched a math textbook since high school, let me break it down. Correlation measures how two stats move together. It's a value between -1 and 1. The closer it is to 1, the more those stats rise and fall together. If it's closer to -1, when one stat goes up, the other one goes down. Pretty easy, right? Well, if you were on Prize Picks last season, you probably already abused this strategy whether you knew it or not. Stacking a QB's passing yards with his top receiver's receiving yards is taking advantage of the correlation between the two players. The good news is, this strategy still works, but the bad news is Prize Picks caught on. They nerfed the payout from the standard 10x to 8.5x. That is pretty significant. So this season, you've got to be more calculated with your stacks, but don't worry, I've got you covered. In general, you want to be correlating a quarterback's passing yards prop with the primary receiver's receiving yards. Not only is this one of the most correlated prop relationships in the NFL, but these props are always on the Prize Picks board. Now we can drill down and get into specifics, so let's talk about the actual best players to stack. This image right here is gold. Most people will charge for this, but here it is for free. It's a chart of each quarterback's total passing yards and the percentage of those yards that went to their wide receiver one last season. The higher up the duo is on the chart, the more of that QB's yards went to that one receiver. You'll also notice a number in the brackets next to each pairing. That's the correlation coefficient. We want it to be as close to 1 to indicate that there was consistency throughout the season rather than just a few monster games between the pair. So starting from the bottom, you'll notice pairs from teams with a bit more offensive depth. For example, Dobbs only received around 20% of Love's passing yards because the Packers also spread the love between Watson and Reed. Mahomes and Rice are also down here because we all know Kelsey is the main man despite being the Chiefs' tight end. As we move up the chart, you'll notice some more top-heavy offenses. You have the likes of Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson, Burrow and Chase, and Minshew and Pittman. Before I show you the best stacks, I want you to take a second to guess what stack tops the list. Okay, here's the reveal. As you'd expect, it's the main powerhouses. We're talking Goff and Amon St. Brown, Dak and Lamb, Hurts and Brown, and Tua and Tyreek. But wait, if you guessed the Dolphin stack as the best, you're actually still wrong. What if I told you there's 2 more even better stacks? For all you Bears fans out there, you'll probably notice that Justin Fields and DJ Moore haven't popped up. That's because they're all the way up here, along with Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. Watson and Cooper are technically the best duo when looking at proportion of yards and correlation, though they played fewer games together. But here's the key takeaway. You want to target stacks above the 35% line with strong correlations of at least 0.6. Of course, that's assuming that teams have not changed. Quick little moment of silence for Tua. So all in all, this strategy still works, but you have to be smart about who you're stacking given Prize Picks payout nerfs. But here's where that next strategy solves that problem. If Prize Picks is going to penalize us for the obvious correlations, what if we did some correlation inception? Earlier, I showed you that Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are one of the best duos to stack. Well, this is a chart showing the correlation between Hurts' passing yards and Brown's receiving yards. You'll notice a strong correlation of 0.85. When Hurts has a big game, so does Brown, and vice versa. But here's where things get interesting. Now look at this chart. The same duo, but instead of receiving yards, we're looking at the longest reception. Let's put the two charts side by side. Pretty similar, aren't they? That's because AJ Brown's longest reception has a correlation of 0.91 with his own receiving yards. If he's racking up yards, he's probably pulling off some big plays. Now, are these two stats necessarily interchangeable? Not exactly, but here's why we care. By swapping receiving yards for longest receptions, we're now back to that perfect 10x payout instead of the 8.5x from before. So we just fixed the payout problem. And it doesn't stop there. Other stats will also give you perfect payouts. Think of a QB's passing yards and a running back's rushing yards. In most cases, there is a negative correlation. For example, this works with Mahomes and Pacheco. If Mahomes is lighting up the sky, Pacheco's ground game will take a hit. So you take the over on one and the under on the other. But be careful, this won't work with teams with heavy rushing QBs like the Ravens who have Lamar Jackson. So the question is the trade-off of less correlation worth the higher payout? And in most cases, the answer is yes. Alright, now that you're warmed up, let's take it up a notch. This third strategy is a combination of everything we've talked about, but on steroids. The goal here is to build full 6-man stacks using correlated props without slashing the payout too much. A standard 6-man pays 25x, so we want to keep the payout to at least 24x. For this example, let's pretend I'm a big Cincinnati fan and I want to script a game where we're going to absolutely blow out the Chiefs and they're going to be playing from behind. Right away, if a team is trailing, that's going to mean more passing yards for their QB. In this case, we take the over on Mahomes. We want to pair that up with Kelsey on his over receiving yards since that's the main target. But let's go even deeper. We'll also add in Rice on his over longest reception. If we have the over on passing, if you were paying attention, you'd know that we want to stack that up with the under rushing yards for Pacheco. The Chiefs are playing catch up, they're passing more and rushing less. We're done with the Chiefs, now how will the Bengals react? If the Bengals have a lead, they're more likely to run the clock down, which means less passing, more rushing. We could take the running back Zach Moss on the over rushing yards. Finally, if the Chiefs are down big enough to the point where they're forced to throw, they're probably losing by at least a full touchdown or two. So the winning team was probably kicking fewer field goals since they were scoring more touchdowns. Now what you're looking at is a beautifully correlated slip with only a slight nerf to 24x. If this game script plays out, all these props are more likely to cash together. Now if part of your thought process was the winning team's QB would pass less in the script, you'd be correct. But throwing that prop in, you're now down to a 20x, which you'd want to avoid. You have to get creative because this strategy can get complicated very fast. Everyone always claims they know ball, so let's put that to the test this season. Finally, I hyped up this last strategy in the intro. It might make you feel uncomfortable, but I call it betting on unders. It's so simple, yet it's like people are allergic to unders. Bear with me now. Here's a list of quarterbacks that went under their passing props in week 1. You see Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, and 21 more QBs. Now here's a list of QBs who cleared their overs. Yes, you're seeing that right. Just 8 QBs went over their passing yards prop. It's quite a massive difference, isn't it? Now you're probably thinking, okay, that's just 1 week. Well, week 2 still had more unders than overs, and I expect this trend to continue throughout the whole season. In fact, this website found that almost every single stat went under more often than over across the 2021 to 2022 season. The sportsbooks know that people love jamming the overs and rooting on for high offense games. So the reality is, lines are often set too high and there's a major value on the unders. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying blindly bet on unders every week, but don't be afraid to play them. Ideally play them more than the overs, especially if your logic favors it. Aaron Rodgers, 40-year-old man coming back to Super Bowl contenders after not playing for 2 years, probably lean towards the under. You're betting on Bryce Young, probably lean towards the under. You get the point. The unders are also favorable when it comes to injuries, as we already saw with Puka in week 1 and Tua in week 2. Add in the fact that PrizePicks usually has even higher lines than the industry average, and you got a recipe for a lot of unders to hit. Even most of my wins this season come from slips that were all unders. Now to quickly answer the question in the title of the video, how will I make 10K this NFL season? Well, using the strategies I just outlined, I expect to make a profit of 50 units a month. That is in line with my current monthly averages of around 70 units a month. The key here is compounding the returns. This is a simulation of a max 1% unit on a $1,000 bankroll. The gains would add up to 10K by the end of February as you increase your unit month after month. So I just gave you the blueprint to create winning stacks every Sunday. But if you're too lazy and just want to sweat out some bets with a community of over 1,000 bettors, I've got you covered. You can join my Discord and tail all my picks with the click of a button and cash hundreds of units this season. First link in the description.